Commander Juwu Park stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship hummed with quiet energy as it moved through the emptiness of space. This was humanity's pride, their most advanced warship, built not just for battle but for making new friends among the stars. Juwu straightened her blue uniform and touched the captain's insignia on her collar. She had served in Earth's Space Force for 15 years. This mission was important. Find the aliens at the edge of the Orion Arm. Talk to them. Make peace. How much longer until we reach the meeting point? She asked. Navigation Officer Gunn answered. 2 hours, Captain. Juwu nodded and walked around the circular bridge. Her crew worked at their stations, some checking screens, others typing on control panels. The bridge was clean and bright, with soft blue lighting that kept everyone alert without hurting their eyes. Captain, said Do-Hyun Kim from the communication station. His voice was tense. We're picking up something strange. A signal coming from Sector 7. Juwu walked over to his station. What kind of signal? I'm not sure. It doesn't match anything in our database. Do-Hyun's fingers moved quickly over his console. It's getting stronger. I think something is approaching us. The bridge fell quiet. First contact. This was what they had trained for, but no amount of training could fully prepare them for meeting an alien species. Full stop, ordered Juwu. Raise shields, but keep weapons powered down. We don't want to look aggressive. The ship slowed to a halt in space. Tactical Officer Minho Lee spoke up next, his voice careful and measured. Captain, I'm detecting a vessel. It's small, scout-sized. On screen, Juwu said. The main view screen changed from stars to show a strange ship. It was dark gray with sharp angles and what looked like spines along its hull. It moved through space in an unusual way, almost like it was swimming. Open a channel, Juwu ordered. Standard greeting package. Do-Hyun worked his controls. Channel open. Sending greeting. Minutes passed. The bridge crew barely moved, watching the alien ship on the screen. Finally, Do-Hyun's console beeped. Captain, we're receiving a response. They're sending visual. The screen changed again. Everyone gasped. The alien had a hard shell-like body, multiple eyes, and moving parts around what might be a mouth. It looked something like an insect, but much larger. Translator is working, Do-Hyun said, his voice shaking slightly. It might take a moment to process their language. The alien made clicking and hissing sounds. The ship's computer worked to turn these noises into words humans could understand. After a minute, a flat computer voice spoke over the alien sounds. Unknown vessel. You have entered voidborn space. Identify purpose. Juwu stepped forward. I am Commander Juwu Park of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We come from Earth, seeking peaceful contact with your people. We wish to share knowledge and build friendship between our species. The alien's multiple eyes seemed to blink in sequence. More clicking and hissing followed. Earth location. Resources. Numbers. Provide. Juwu frowned. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. The alien wasn't interested in friendship. It wanted information about Earth. We hope to share such information after proper diplomatic channels are established, Juwu said carefully. We have brought cultural information about our people as a gesture of goodwill. The alien made a sharp sound that the translator couldn't process. Then it spoke again. Insufficient. Earth will provide resources. Earth will submit. Or Earth will face extinction. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Science Officer Jae-won leaned toward Juwu. Captain, I don't think they're interested in diplomacy. Juwu nodded slightly. Let me try again. She addressed the alien. We seek peaceful relations. War benefits neither of our species. Perhaps we could. The alien cut her off. Decision time. 24 Earth hours. Submit or face consequences. The screen went black. Juwu took a deep breath. Well, that didn't go as planned. She turned to Do-Hyun. End transmission. As Do-hyun worked his controls, Min-ho called out from tactical. Captain, they're scanning us. Deep scans. They're looking at our weapons, shields, engine capability. Everything. Block them, ordered Ju-woo. I'm trying, but their technology is different. Our countermeasures aren't fully effective. Ju-woo walked quickly to Min-ho's station. What are they getting? Too much, Min-ho said grimly. They can see our shield strength, weapon capabilities. They'll know we're powerful for our size. But he looked up, his face pale. They'll know we're no match for a large force. Executive Officer Yoonji joined them. Do you think they're bluffing about the extinction threat? Before Ju-woo could answer, Min-ho's console lit up with dozens of warning signals. Captain. Massive energy readings at the edge of the system. His voice rose. Multiple FTL signatures. Many ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. How many? Ju-woo asked, her voice steady despite her rising fear. Min-ho stared at his screen. Hundreds. No, thousands. The computer is still counting. They're forming into attack groups. Ju-woo returned to her captain's chair and pressed the ship-wide communication button. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. She turned to her bridge crew. Show me the incoming fleet. The view screen changed to show the edge of the star system. What appeared were not just ships but an armada. They moved in perfect formation. Thousands of vessels ranging from small fighters to massive carriers, all with the same dark, spiny appearance as the scout ship. Final count, Min-ho reported, his voice barely a whisper. Approximately 10,000 vessels. The scout ship hailed them again. The insectoid alien appeared on screen. Your technology is primitive. Your defense is inadequate. You have 24 hours to surrender Earth and all its resources. Ju-woo ended the transmission. The bridge was silent except for the soft beeping of consoles. They never wanted to talk, Ju-woo said, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. This whole thing was a trap. They just wanted to assess our capabilities before attacking. Yoonjae looked at the tactical display, showing the massive alien fleet. We should run, get back to Earth, and warn them. We'd never make it, Min-ho said. Their fastest ships could catch us before we're halfway home. And even if we did reach Earth, what then? Our entire defense fleet has fewer than 200 ships. Ju-woo stared at the screen, watching the alien armada organize itself. 10,000 ships against one. The odds were impossible, but sitting in her captain's chair, watching her crew look to her for guidance, Commander Ju-woo Park made a decision. If we run, Earth dies. If we surrender, Earth dies, she said quietly. So we fight, and we find a way to win. The senior officers of the UES Prometheus gathered in the small conference room just off the bridge. The lights were dimmed to preserve power, casting long shadows across worried faces. On the table's central display, a sea of red dots represented the voidborn fleet, 10,000 ships moving steadily toward them. Executive Officer Subin Choi pointed at the display. 10,000 vessels, she said, her voice tight. We can't possibly stand against that, and we can't reach Earth in time to warn them. Subin ran her hand through her short black hair, a habit when she was stressed. Commander Ju-woo looked around the table at her senior staff. Min-ho from Tactical appeared exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Do-hyun from Communications stared at his hands. Engineer Jun-ho looked ready to punch something. Options, Ju-woo asked simply. Min-ho shook his head. Fighting is suicide, Captain. Even if we used every weapon we have, we might take down 20 ships at most before they destroy us. What about running? Asked Vono. The Prometheus is fast. Their lead vessels are faster, said Min-ho. And they've positioned scout ships to cut off our path to Earth. Do-hyun spoke up. We could send a message drone. It might get through. Unlikely, said Subin. They're jamming our long-range communications. A drone would be detected and destroyed. Silence fell over the room. The red dots on the display continued their slow advance. Then Science Officer Haijin Kang cleared her throat. She had been quiet until now, her eyes focused on her tablet computer. Everyone turned to look at her. "There might be a way, Captain," she said softly. "The singularity drive." Everyone on the bridge fell silent. Some officers exchanged confused looks, but those who understood what Haijin was suggesting looked shocked. The Prometheus was the first human ship equipped with the experimental singularity drive. It was the reason this diplomatic mission had been possible in the first place. The drive bent space-time, allowing the ship to travel faster than light. It was cutting-edge technology, still not fully understood. "You want to weaponize our FTL drive?" Ju asked, understanding immediately. Haijin nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "If we reconfigure the containment field, we could potentially create a controlled gravitational anomaly. In theory, it would be devastating to a tightly packed fleet." "You're talking about making a black hole," said Chunho, his eyes wide. "Not exactly," Haijin corrected. "More like a temporary gravitational lens. The singularity drive works by pinching space in front of the ship and expanding it behind. But if we remove the expansion part and amplify the compression, the aliens would be pulled toward a single point," finished Subin, catching on. "Yes," said Haijin. "And not just pulled, their ships would be subjected to enormous tidal forces. The closer they are to each other, the worse the effect." "Has this ever been tested?" asked Ju. Haijin shook her head. "Never. The drive was designed for travel, not this." "Can it be done?" Ju pressed. Haijin looked down at her calculations. "Theoretically, yes. I would need to work with engineer Junho to reroute power, modify the containment algorithms, and adjust the field projectors. It would take several hours." "And what happens to us?" Ju asked quietly. The room grew even more still. Haijin met her captain's eyes. "Best case, we survive with minimal damage. Worst case," Haijin didn't finish the sentence, but everyone knew what she meant. The worst case was that the Prometheus would be destroyed by its own weapon. Ju stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars shone against the blackness of space. Somewhere past those stars was Earth, unaware of the danger coming its way. Billions of lives depended on what she decided in the next few minutes. "If we do nothing, Earth falls," Ju said softly. "If we run, we might live a little longer, but Earth still falls." She turned back to face her officers. "If we try this, we might all die, but Earth might have a chance." Minho spoke up. "Captain, even if this works, even if we destroy a large number of their ships, there will still be thousands left." "Yes," said Ju, "but they'll know we had a weapon capable of such destruction. They'll know Earth might have more." "Psychological warfare," said Subin with a small smile. "Make them fear what else we might have." "Exactly," said Ju. "If we can't win by force, we win by fear." Ju looked at Haijin. "How long?" "6 hours to modify the drive," said Haijin. "Maybe 5 if Chunho and I work together with the engineering team." "You have 4, said Ju. "The alien commander gave us 24 hours, but they're still advancing. We need to be ready before they get too close." "Where will we position the ship?" asked Minho. Ju turned back to the tactical display. "Here," she said, pointing to a spot between the alien fleet and Earth. "The ships will be most concentrated at this point. If Haijin's weapon works, we'll catch the most vessels in the effect." "And if it doesn't work?" asked Doyan. "Then we fight until the end," said Ju simply. The room was quiet as everyone considered what was being proposed. It wasn't just a desperate plan. It was likely a suicide mission. Chunho was the first to speak. "I'm in. Better to go down fighting than waiting for the end." "Me too," said Haijin. "I can make this work. I know I can." One by one, the others nodded their agreement. "Then it's decided," said Ju. "Haijin, Chunho, get to work on the drive." Minho, plot a course to the intercept point. Subin, organize repair teams to fix any damage from the initial contact. We need this ship at peak condition. As the officers filed out, Subin stayed behind with Juwu. The crew deserves to know, Subin said, what we're planning, the risks involved. Juwu nodded. I'll tell them, but not everything. They need hope to function, not the full weight of what might happen. And what about you? Asked Subin. What's keeping you going? Juwu looked once more at the display showing the alien armada. The thought that my one ship might save billions of lives, she smiled sadly. Pretty good exchange rate, don't you think? Subin didn't answer. She didn't need to. Both women knew that in the cold mathematics of war, sacrificing one ship and crew to save a planet was an easy calculation. But math didn't account for the fear they felt, or the desire to live that burned in every person aboard the Prometheus. As Juwu left the conference room, she touched the captain's insignia on her collar. 4 hours to prepare. 4 hours to ready herself and her crew for what might be their final mission. 4 hours to prepare a weapon that had never been tested, against an enemy that vastly outnumbered them. The odds were impossible. But as Juwu walked onto the bridge and saw her crew working with renewed purpose, she felt something unexpected. Hope. The UES Prometheus hung in the blackness of space, a tiny speck against the vastness of the Kuiper Belt. This far from the sun, only the ship's running lights marked its presence. Inside, the crew worked with quiet determination. 4 hours had passed since Commander Juwu gave the order to modify the Singularity Drive. Status report, Juwu said, sitting straight in her captain's chair. Despite having not slept for over 30 hours, her eyes were clear and focused. Science Officer Haijin looked up from her station. Her face was tired, but her voice was steady. The drive modifications are complete, Captain. We've rerouted all non-essential power systems to support the gravitational field generators. Will it work? Juwu asked simply. Haijin and Engineer Juno exchanged glances. In theory, Juno said. We've never done anything like this before. The ship's artificial intelligence, Athene, spoke through the bridge speakers. Her voice was calm and measured. Based on my calculations, the modified Singularity Drive has a 62% chance of creating the gravitational anomaly as intended. However, I cannot accurately predict the effect on nearby vessels, nor on the Prometheus itself. Those aren't great odds, said Executive Officer Subin quietly. Better odds than facing 10,000 ships in conventional battle, replied Juwu. She turned to Tactical Officer Minho. What's the status of the alien fleet? Minho checked his display. Leading elements will reach our position in approximately 30 minutes. The main body of the fleet is moving in a tight formation, just as we hoped. He paused. Captain, HFY, and I have identified what appears to be their command ship. It's larger than the others and stays at the center of their formation. Can we target it specifically? Minho shook his head. Not directly. But if the gravitational effect works as Haijin predicts, the command ship will be caught in the strongest part of the field. Juwu nodded and stood up, addressing the entire bridge. This is the moment we've prepared for. Every member of this crew has performed admirably under extraordinary pressure. Whatever happens next, I want you all to know. Captain, interrupted Communications Officer Doyen. Incoming transmission from the alien fleet. Juwu straightened her uniform. On screen. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the insect-like features of a voidborn commander. This one was larger than the scout they had encountered earlier, with more elaborate markings on its exoskeleton. Multiple eyes focused on Juwu with cold intelligence. I am Supreme Commander Taejun of the Voidborn Collective. The alien said, its words translated into flat mechanical English. You have positioned your vessel in the path of our fleet. Explain. Juwu kept her face neutral. I am Commander Juwu Park of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We are here to prevent your invasion of Earth. The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. The translation software interpreted this as laughter. A single vessel. Your species is even more primitive than we assessed. Taejun said, our scans show your weapons are inadequate. Your shields cannot withstand sustained fire from even our smallest ships. Juwoo's eyes narrowed slightly. Then perhaps your scans missed something important. We missed nothing, Taejun replied. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will ensure your suffering is legendary. Your planet will become an example to others who might defy the collective. Juwoo stepped forward, her voice firm. This is your final warning. Turn your fleet around or face the consequences. Behind her, Haijin whispered to Juno, the drive is ready. We just need to initiate the sequence when ordered. Taejun's mandibles clicked again. The translator rendered his response as laughter. Your bravery is noted, human. Now witness the futility of resistance. The screen went dark. They've cut transmission, said Do-yeon, his fingers moving quickly over his console. Multiple weapon systems are powering up across their fleet. Shields to maximum, ordered Juwoo. All hands, brace for impact. The first wave of alien ships opened fire. Green energy bolts streaked across space, slamming into the Prometheus's shields. The ship shuddered under the assault. Shields holding at 92%, reported Minnow. But that was just the first wave. More ships are moving into firing position. Athena, Juwoo called out. Time until optimal positioning of the enemy fleet. 7 minutes and 14 seconds, Captain. The A replied. The main body of the fleet is moving exactly as predicted. They appear to be surrounding us to prevent escape. More alien fire hit the Prometheus. The lights flickered briefly. Shields at 83%, said Minnow. His voice remained professional, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Captain, at this rate, our shields will fail before the fleet reaches optimal position. Should we return fire? Asked Subin. Juwoo shook her head. No, every bit of power needs to go to the shields and the drive. Besides, she added with a grim smile, we want them to think we're helpless. We want them to come closer. The ship rocked again as a particularly heavy barrage struck the forward shields. Shields at 76%, reported Minnow. 5 more minutes until optimal positioning. On the view screen, they could see the alien fleet spreading out in a sphere around the Prometheus. Thousands of ships, from small fighters to massive cruisers, all focusing their attention on the single human vessel. They're toying with us, said Subin. They could destroy us quickly if they committed their full fleet. Pride, said Juwoo. They want to savor their victory. Another hit, stronger than before. A console at the back of the bridge sparked and went dark. Shields at 68%, said Minnow. 3 minutes to optimal positioning. Engineering officer, Shunho's voice came over the comms. Captain, we're getting fluctuations in the drive's containment field. The shields are drawing too much power. We need those shields, said Juwoo. Can you stabilize the drive? Working on it, Junho replied. But something's got to give. We can't maintain full shields and charge the drive at the same time. Juwoo made a quick decision. Reduce shields to 50%. Divert the power to the drive. Captain, protested Subin. That will leave us vulnerable. If the drive fails, we're dead anyway, said Juwoo. Take the risk. As the shields weakened, the ship took more damage. Warning alarms sounded as hull breaches were reported on the lower decks. Automatic bulkheads engage, reported HFY. Hull integrity at 92%. Shields at 41% and falling, said Minnow. 1 minute to optimal positioning. The bridge shook violently. A ceiling panel fell, narrowly missing Do-yeon. Hull breach on deck 7, reported HFY. Emergency teams responding. Shields at 32%, said Minnow, his voice tight with tension. 30 seconds to optimal positioning. On the view screen, they could see the alien fleet had almost completely surrounded them. Thousands of ships arranged in a perfect sphere, all firing at the Prometheus. Drive status. Ju asked. "Ready," said Hyjin, "but we'll need to drop shields completely to initiate the sequence." Another hit rocked the ship. Someone at the back of the bridge cried out as they were thrown from their seat. "Shields at 21%, reported Minho. 10 seconds to optimal positioning." Jumu gripped the arms of her chair. "On my mark, drop shields, and initiate the drive sequence." The bridge crew looked at her with a mixture of fear and determination. No one spoke. They all knew what was at stake. 5 seconds, said Minho. Jumu took a deep breath. 3, 2, 1, mark. The shields vanished. For a terrible moment, the alien weapons struck the Prometheus directly. Alarms blared throughout the ship as hull breaches were reported on multiple decks. "Initiating singularity drive," shouted Hyjin, her fingers flying over her console. A deep hum built throughout the ship. The lights dimmed. The view screen showed the alien fleet still firing, still advancing. Then, slowly at first, something changed. A point of distortion appeared in space, directly in front of the Prometheus. It was small at first, just a spot where the stars seemed to bend. But it grew quickly, expanding outward. "It's working," whispered Hyjin, her eyes wide. The alien ships closest to the distortion began to drift toward it. Then, as the gravitational pull increased, they were yanked violently toward the center. Ships collided with each other, breaking apart as the immense forces crushed them together. "Incoming transmission," said Do-Yun suddenly. "It's the alien commander." "On screen," said Juu, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. Supreme Commander Taejin appeared, but his demeanor had changed. The cold confidence was gone, replaced by what looked like fear. "What have you done?" he demanded. "What weapon is this?" Juu stood tall despite the shaking ship beneath her feet. "I warned you, Commander. Now witness the consequences of your arrogance." "Shields at 31% and falling," reported Minho, as the bridge shook from another impact. A console exploded in a shower of sparks, sending a junior officer tumbling to the floor. Medical staff rushed to help the fallen crew member. Commander Juu gripped her chair as the Prometheus rocked violently. Outside, the alien armada closed in like predators circling wounded prey. Their weapons fire lit up space with green flashes that slammed into the weakening shields of the human vessel. "Damage report," Juu called out. Executive Officer Subin checked her tablet. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Emergency bulkheads holding. Engineering reports coolant leak in Section 7. Another hit rocked the ship. The lights flickered, plunging the bridge into darkness for a second before the emergency systems kicked in. "Shields at 28%, Minho updated, his face illuminated by the red glow of warning signals on his console. At her station, Science Officer Hyjin worked frantically, her fingers flying across her controls. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she rerouted systems and checked calculations. Engineer Juno appeared on the small screen next to her, his face streaked with grime. "Power couplings are holding," he reported from engineering. "But barely. We've lost 2 auxiliary generators." Hyjin nodded without looking up. "Reroute through the tertiary systems. We need every bit of power we can get." On the main view screen, the alien fleet surrounded them in a sphere of destruction. Ships of all sizes, from small fighters to massive carriers, all focused their weapons on the lone human vessel. "How much longer?" Juu asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Singularity drive modifications complete," Hyjin announced, finally looking up. Her face showed exhaustion, but also determination. "But Captain, we'll need to drop shields completely to generate enough power." Jumu processed this information quickly. No shields meant taking the full force of the alien weapons directly on their hull. It would be like standing in a rainstorm of fire. "How long will the drive take to activate?" she asked. 30 seconds from initiation to full effect," Hyjin replied. "Maybe 40. Another hit rocked the ship harder than before. A ceiling panel fell, crashing onto an empty workstation. "Shields at 22%, reported Minho grimly. They're concentrating their fire on our weakest points. Juwu stood up. All hands, she announced over the ship-wide communication system. This is the captain. Prepare for emergency maneuver. Secure all stations and brace for impact. She turned to her bridge crew. Everyone, secure for impact. Minho, drop shields on my mark and divert all power to the drive. The bridge crew moved quickly, strapping themselves into their seats, locking down loose equipment. Medical Officer Soyoung passed out emergency breath masks. Just in case, she said quietly. The Prometheus shuddered under continuous bombardment. Through the view screen, they could see the alien ships moving closer, emboldened by the weakening human defenses. Athena, Juwu called to the ship's eye. Status of the fleet positioning. The eye's calm voice replied. The voidborn fleet is now at optimal positioning for maximum effect. 87% of their vessels are within the projected gravitational influence radius. Shields at 17%, Minho reported. We can't take much more of this. Juwu took a deep breath and looked around at her crew. These were the best officers in Earth's fleet. They had trained together, laughed together, and now they might die together. But if they succeeded, Earth would have a chance. Shuno, she called to engineering. Are you ready? The engineer's tired face appeared on screen. As ready as we'll ever be, Captain. The drive is at full charge. All we need is the power from the shields. Hygiene. The science officer nodded. Calculations complete. The anomaly should last for exactly 3 minutes before collapsing. Should? Asked Subin, raising an eyebrow. Hygiene almost smiled. This has never been done before. We're in uncharted territory. Another violent impact shook the ship. Warning alarms blared as more systems reported damage. Shields at 12%. Minho called out. Structural integrity of the forward hull is compromised. Juwu knew it was time. They could wait no longer. All hands. This is it. Whatever happens next, I want you to know it has been my honor to serve with each of you. She met the eyes of each bridge officer in turn, then sat down and secured her harness. Minho, on my mark. Drop shields and divert all power to the drive. Minho's hand hovered over his console. Ready, Captain. Juwu took one final look at the alien fleet on the view screen. 10,000 ships against one. The odds were impossible, but humans had always done the impossible. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Minho pressed the command. The shields that had been protecting the Prometheus vanished instantly. For a terrible moment, there was nothing between the human ship and the enemy weapons. The effect was immediate and devastating. Alien energy beams struck the hull directly. Metal screamed as it was torn apart. Explosions rocked the ship from stem to stern. Warnings blared throughout the ship as hull breaches were reported on multiple decks. The bridge itself shook so violently that Juwu thought it might tear apart. Hull breaches on all decks, shouted Subin over the noise. Emergency bulkheads engaging. Life support failing in sections 3 through 7, reported HFY. Emergency systems activated. Through the chaos, Hyjin remained focused on her console. Power levels rising. Containment field stable. Initiating sequence now. She pressed a final command. Singularity drive activated. For a moment, nothing happened. The Prometheus continued to take devastating hits. A support beam crashed down from the ceiling, narrowly missing Dohyun at communications. Did it work? Juwu asked, struggling to see through the smoke that now filled the bridge. Hyjin stared at her readings, her face pale. The drive is active, but... She was interrupted as a strange sensation swept through the ship. It felt as if the very fabric of reality was stretching, like being pulled in a dozen different directions at once. Crew members gasped as the feeling intensified. Look, shouted Minho, pointing at the view screen. Space itself seemed to fold inward at a point just ahead of the Prometheus. What began as a pinprick of absolute darkness expanded rapidly, growing from the size of a coin to the size of a house to the size of a city in seconds. The effect on the alien fleet was immediate. The ships closest to the anomaly were pulled toward it, slowly at first, then with increasing speed as the gravitational force grew stronger. "It's working," Hyjin whispered, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. On the view screen, they watched as alien vessels were dragged inexorably toward the center of the darkness. Ships collided with each other, breaking apart under the strain. The smaller vessels went first, crushed by the immense gravitational forces or torn apart as they tried to escape. "Athena, status of the alien fleet," ordered Jiwoo, her voice steady despite the continuing damage to her own ship. "Approximately 1,200 enemy vessels destroyed," reported the AI. 2,500 more heavily damaged. The remaining fleet is attempting to retreat, but many are caught in the gravitational pull. "What about their command ship?" asked Jiwoo. "The command vessel is at the edge of the effect radius," said HFY. "It is attempting to withdraw, but is experiencing significant gravitational stress." On a secondary screen, they could see the massive alien command ship struggling against the pull of the artificial singularity. Its engines glowed brightly as they fought the invisible force dragging it inward. "Captain," called Junho from engineering. "The drive is becoming unstable. The containment field is fluctuating." "How long can we maintain it?" asked Jiwoo. 2 minutes, maybe less," replied Junho. "After that, we risk a catastrophic collapse." Jiwoo looked at the damage reports flooding her console. The Prometheus was barely holding together. Multiple decks were exposed to space. Life support was failing in several sections. But the plan was working. The alien fleet was being decimated. "Keep it going as long as possible," ordered Jiwoo. "We need to cause maximum damage." The bridge crew watched in awe as more alien ships were pulled into the growing darkness. Some tried to flee, their engines straining against the gravitational pull. Others fired their weapons wildly, as if they could destroy the invisible force that gripped them. 3,000 vessels destroyed, reported HFY. "The anomaly continues to grow in power." "Captain," said Do-Yun suddenly, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien command ship." Jiwoo hesitated, then nodded. On screen, the face of Supreme Commander Taejin appeared, his insectoid features contorted in what might have been rage or fear. The translation software struggled to keep up with his rapid clicking. "What have you done?" he demanded. "What is this weapon?" Jiwoo stood tall despite the damage around her. "This is humanity's answer to your threats, Commander. We warned you." Aboard the voidborn command ship, Supreme Commander Taejin stood frozen at his command post. All 6 of his limbs gripped the railing as he watched the destruction of his mighty fleet. The view screens surrounding him showed scenes of horror that no voidborn had ever witnessed before. Ships were being crushed like empty food containers. Massive cruisers collided with each other, their hulls crumpling on impact. Battle carriers stretched and twisted into impossible shapes as the gravitational forces pulled them apart. The proud vessels of the Voidborn Collective, once the terror of 100 star systems, were being destroyed by the thousands. "Status report." Taejin clicked to his second-in-command. His voice translator was barely working, damaged by the same strange forces pulling at his ship. "We have lost contact with the entire forward fleet," replied Sub-Commander Gion, his exoskeleton clicking nervously. "Our sensors can no longer count the destroyed vessels. The anomaly continues to grow." "Can we escape?" Taejin asked, his usual confidence gone. "The engines are at maximum power, but we are still being pulled toward the center," Jihan reported. "At current rate, we have less than 1 minute before we cannot break free." Taejin's compound eyes took in the scenes of destruction. How could one human ship do this? Their scans had shown primitive weapons, basic shields. Nothing indicated they possessed technology that could bend space itself. "The human ship," Taejin said suddenly. "What is its status?" "Heavily damaged but still intact," replied Gion. "It appears to be the source of the anomaly." Taejin had conquered 12 species across 8 star systems. He had never retreated, never surrendered. But he had also never faced anything like this. "Prepare all remaining ships for emergency jump," he ordered. "We must." His words were cut short as a violent shudder ran through the command ship. Warning alarms blared as support beams began to twist and bend. "The anomaly is reaching critical strength," cried the science officer. "Hull integrity failing." For 3 terrifying minutes, the voidborn fleet was torn apart. Ships vanished into the darkness, crushed into nothing, were torn apart by the immense forces. The lucky ones were those far enough away to use their engines to escape, but even they suffered serious damage. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the anomaly collapsed. The pinpoint of darkness shrank until it vanished entirely, leaving only debris where thousands of ships had been. Taejin slowly uncurled his limbs from the railing. His command ship had barely escaped, its outer hull plates torn away, multiple systems failing. Around him, his officers moved in shocked silence, checking damage reports and casualty figures. "Final count," said Dion quietly. "Nearly 9,000 vessels destroyed. Over 2 million crew lost." Taejin could not process the numbers. The Voidborn Collective had never suffered such a defeat. In 1,000 years of expansion, they had lost perhaps 50 ships in total. Now, in just 3 minutes, Supreme Commander called the communications officer. "We are receiving a transmission from the human ship. They are broadcasting to all remaining vessels." "Show me," Taejin ordered. The main screen flickered, then showed the face of the human captain. Her uniform was torn and dirty. Behind her, smoke filled the bridge of her ship. Injured crew members could be seen working at damaged consoles. But the human herself appeared calm, her eyes steady as she looked into the camera. "This was one ship with one weapon," she said, her voice clear and confident. "Imagine what our homeworld could do if provoked further. You will withdraw immediately from human space and recognize Earth's sovereignty, or we will be forced to develop even more effective deterrents." The screen went dark. The command center was silent except for the sound of emergency systems and the creaking of damaged hull plates. "Orders, Supreme Commander?" asked Gihun finally. Taejin's mind raced. If one ship could do this, what could a planet full of these humans do? Were there more weapons like this waiting at their homeworld? Could they create even more powerful anomalies? "Send the following message to all remaining ships," Taejin said slowly. "The collective is withdrawing from this sector. All vessels are to retreat beyond the boundary of human space." His officers stared at him in shock. The Voidborn Collective had never retreated. "Supreme Commander," protested his war minister, "we still have over 1,000 ships." "We cooled." "We could what?" snapped Taejin. "Lose another 9,000. Watch as more of our fleet is crushed like insects." He gestured toward the view screen showing the debris field that had once been his armada. "The humans have technology we do not understand. Until we do, we will keep our distance." The command center fell silent. Then, one by one, his officers returned to their stations, sending the retreat orders. Taejin turned to look once more at the small human ship on the view screen. It was firing maneuvering thrusters now, turning slowly away from the debris field, limping back toward its home system. How could something so small and damaged have caused so much destruction? Aboard the UES Prometheus, Commander Ju Park sat in her damaged captain's chair. Around her, the bridge was in ruins. Exposed wires hung from the ceiling. Consoles sparked and smoked. The air was thin, life support systems running on emergency power. "Status report," she asked, her voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. Executive Officer Suvin checked her tablet, which was cracked but still functioning. "Hull breaches on all decks. Life support at 40% capacity. Engine power at 25%. We've lost 38 crew members." She paused. "But we're alive, Captain. And the alien fleet is retreating." Ju nodded slowly. The cost had been high. 38 of her people gone. But Earth was safe. "And the singularity drive?" she asked. Science Officer Haijin looked up from her damaged station. Her face was smudged with soot, a cut above her eye still bleeding. "Completely burned out. The containment field collapsed exactly as we predicted. We won't be using it to get home." "How long to reach Earth on conventional engines?" asked Zhu. "At current power levels, 3 weeks," replied Minho from Tactical. Zhu looked around at her surviving crew. They were exhausted, injured, but their eyes showed something new: pride. They had faced impossible odds and survived. More than survived. They had won. "Set course for home," Zhu ordered. "Best possible speed." As the Prometheus slowly turned and began its long journey back to Earth, its crew was unaware of what they had truly accomplished. In the days and weeks to come, as news of the battle spread through the Voidborn Collective and beyond, the story would grow. One human ship had faced 10,000 alien vessels and emerged victorious. One human weapon had destroyed 9,000 enemy ships in minutes. Other alien species, some who had been watching the Voidborn expansion with fear, took note. Reports were sent to distant governments. Assessments were updated. Plans were changed. For centuries, the galaxy had seen humans as newcomers, primitive, curious creatures just beginning to explore beyond their own star system. But after this day, everything would be different. The species that could create weapons that bent space itself. The species that would face overwhelming odds without surrender. The species that had forced the mighty Voidborn Collective to retreat. 6 months later, when the Prometheus finally docked at Earth's orbital station, Commander Zhu Park stood at attention as Earth's leaders boarded her repaired ship. They pinned medals to her uniform and spoke of heroism and sacrifice. But Zhu was thinking of the 38 crew members who hadn't made it home, and of the terrible weapon they had unleashed. That night, at the celebration dinner, she was approached by an admiral who took her aside, away from the crowds. "You should know," he said quietly, "that 3 days after your battle, we received messages from 7 different alien species seeking diplomatic relations with Earth." Zhu looked surprised. "Because of what we did?" The admiral nodded. "Word spreads fast, even across the stars. You didn't just save Earth, Commander. You changed humanity's place in the galaxy." He looked out the window at the stars. "We're not just explorers anymore. Now we're a species to be feared and respected." Zhu followed his gaze to the night sky, thinking of the vast darkness between those distant points of light, and the new role humanity would play among them. For better or worse, the universe would never look at humans the same way again. The end.